Welcome to A Course in Business Miracles. This is Heather Dominick, creator of businessmiracles.com and founder and leader of the highly sensitive entrepreneur movement. Join me today for some genuine practical assistance and a business-altering and life-changing experience, a business miracle. This is A Course in Business Miracles, episode 36. The Miracle Combo Energies of Grace and Grit. Listen in to find out how you can use the Miracle Combo Energies of Grace and Grit as a highly sensitive entrepreneur to manage any quicksand moment of limiting beliefs. So two of the ways that we'll be looking at how we manage the limiting belief of quicksand is what I have come to call grace and grit. To start, let's look at the definitions of grace and grit. So, what is grace? Well, according to Christian Moore, who is a researcher, social worker, author, speaker, and expert on resilience, he defines grace as unmerited divine assistance and an act of kindness, courtesy, or decency. Interesting. Unmerited divine assistance, or simply an act of kindness. Grace. Grit. What is grit? According to researcher Angela Duckworth, who is known as one of the founding researchers on grit, grit is a willingness to stay with a pursuit until it is accomplished. The willingness to stay with a pursuit until it is accomplished. Now, what I really appreciate, especially about that definition of grit, is first of all that I know as highly sensitives, we can hear a word like grit and our system goes, what? What is going to be asked of me? Where do I need to hide? What do I need to push through? But simply it being a willingness to stay with a pursuit until it is accomplished. So Angela Duckworth comes from the field of positive psychology. And when I heard her colleague at Carolyn Adam Miller speak, which was actually on a panel about millennials, which I find super fascinating, what she really spoke about was that grit is not a skill, but a willingness. So again, the emphasis on willingness. And that, again, grit is a willingness to stay with a pursuit that you have a passion for. So another way that you can think about that is the willingness to stay with a pursuit that is connected to your life purpose philosophy. And what both Angela and Carolyn share is that grit is not about potential, but about what you do with it. So it's not about whether you have potential or not, but simply how you choose to use it. So, Angela talks about the 4 reasons why people quit. So let's look at that. Reason number 1, I'm bored. Reason number 2, the effort isn't worth it. The effort isn't worth it. Reason number 3, this isn't important to me. And reason number 4, I can't do this, so I might as well give up. So again, I'm bored. This isn't worth it. This isn't important to me. I can't do it, so I might as well give up. Deep breath in and let it out. And then she shares why people don't quit. Or in my terminology, otherwise known as stay with it. Why people stay with it. Number 1, interest. I really enjoy this. Number 2, capacity to practice. I want to master this. Number 3, purpose. This matters to me. Number 4, hope. I believe in possibility. So again, I really enjoy this. I want to master this. This matters to me. I believe in possibility. Deep breath in and let it out. So, to some degree, probably each of you in this room knows something about my story of being self-employed. But maybe you know some of it, but not all of it. Or maybe you know all of it. Or maybe you're like, wow, I don't even know who this person is at the front of the room. How the hell did I get here? Who is this? So let me just remind you of a few different things about my self-employed journey. So first of all, I used to be a high school drama teacher. That was my first career for 8 years. I was in my, 6th year of teaching. I had just maybe 5th year of teaching. I had just left teaching at a very affluent high school on Long Island, which is the second paying highest school district in the state of New York, where teachers at that school were earning 6-figure salaries. I left that school and I took a teaching job at an inner city school in Manhattan, which meant a 50% pay cut. And that shows you how disconnected I was from my money story at the time. Yet I did it because I wanted a change in lifestyle. I lived in Manhattan, I lived in Greenwich Village at the time. To get out to my teaching job on Long Island, it was a 3-hour commute, an hour and a half both ways. The inner city school I could walk to. So I started that job, and 1 week later was 9/11. And everything in New York, the world, but definitely New York, changed. The Trade Center was less than a mile from where I lived, just a little bit over a mile from where I was teaching. On the day of 9/11, I was teaching in my classroom on the 9th floor, and the sky just was turning black because the smoke from the towers was just covering the sky. And as a result of that, so much changed, including that I had taken after-school jobs, after-school teaching jobs, to make up for some of the salary that I had lost in changing positions. And after 9/11, those programs were pulled. Businesses were closed. Everything practically in the city shut down. So these jobs and this additional income that I was relying on, gone. As a result, 6 months later, I declared bankruptcy. I couldn't in any way figure out how I could continue. I had credit card debt up the wazoo. The 50% teaching salary cut was no way going to cover my expenses. The city, again, had shut down. Through a pull, a calling, / naivete, somewhere within the next 3 years, I got the idea that I was going to start my own business. And I've been asked on interviews before, did 9/11, was that a catalyst? And I always answer, at the time, I probably would have answered no. But in looking back, I can say yes, because everything was turned upside down. In an instant, anything and everything that I once thought that I could count on, gone. And I loved my students so much, and I loved teaching, but the system was brutally suffocating. It didn't matter if I was at the affluent school or at the inner city school. The system was the system was the system. And I was passionate about taking care of my health and my body, and I had done this nutrition training, and there was a certification being offered for nutrition and wellness, for becoming a nutrition and wellness coach. And again, a pull, a calling, naivete. I thought, that's what I'm going to do. And I was working as a drama teacher, so that means I was teaching all day. I was directing shows at night, and I went back for that certification at the same time, and I started my business while I was still teaching, seeing clients one evening a week and then on Saturday mornings. I saved up enough money, it was $7,000, that I could subsist on barely for 6 months if I did not sign on any more clients after I left my teaching job. And as part of the transition, I took an after-school position at the school that I had been working at. They wanted me to teach drama after school, and I negotiated for them to teach nutrition. And I looked at that after-school job as one of my clients. And then I put everything I had into building that business. And I knew nothing about what it took to be self-employed. Now, granted, looking back and being able to reflect, absolutely my HSE coping mechanism of pushing was kicking in, for sure. However, when it got to like the 6-month mark, because I remember it was November, December of that year, and I had left teaching in June. And in November through to December, I had talked to a prospect every week for 6 weeks. And it came right before the holidays, and none of those prospects had enrolled to work with me. And I thought, something has to change. And I dove into looking at what was happening. And that was really my beginning for both self-assessment, self-inquiry, and the P2P process, otherwise known as the HSE Selling Success Conversation. That's what came out of those 6 weeks. And by 3 months later, January, February, March, between March and April, I was at a full practice. No one has ever given me a dime to start my business. No one has ever supported me while being in business. I got married. Well, I had just started my business. I was 2 years into my business, just barely making things, scraping by. And my husband and I got married. His money's always been his money. My money has always been my money. And I continued the investigation of what came out of those initial 6 weeks of self-assessment, self-inquiry, and what it takes to have a really successful selling conversation. As a person at that time, again, not knowing I was highly sensitive, but at that time, I knew that I was spiritual by nature, right? An HSE strength. I had been a student of the course, A Course in Miracles, since my mother had died when I was 14. And I don't think my father really knew what to do with me, so he was like, here, study this. Here, listen to this woman, Marianne Williamson, talk about returning to love. And I was like, okay, and have been a student ever since. But out of those 6 weeks, that's what I turned to. I was like, if this course has helped me be able to continue to survive the death of my mother at 14, 3 wicked stepmothers, never having enough money to pay my bills, not being able to maintain a romantic relationship to save my life all throughout my 20s and into my 30s, survive 9/11, survive bankruptcy. Well, it probably will make a difference in my business. And that was really the beginning. And then it's just been a continuation of that path ever since. Where I'm 14 years later, here with all of you, this beautiful, amazing team. My intention of sharing that with you is, one, a reminder. If at any time in our mentoring together, you look at me and you say, oh, well, Heather, she can do it. She's Heather. I remind you, those are the circumstances. No help, no support, including my family, who was like, what are you doing? Right? And yet, what has allowed me to continue that life purpose philosophy, right? Reaching for the light, the consistent commitment to the evolution, because I enjoy the process. I really enjoy this because I am committed to mastering, with the understanding that there's no arrival, there's no end. Until I draw my last breath, and then I'll come back as a butterfly and begin it all again, or a rat, or someone who lives in Africa, or a tree if I'm really lucky. And because this matters to me, and because I believe in possibility, because what's the other choice? And that is the second reason I'm telling you this. Because to me, that gives me the right to stand up here or sit and speak about grace and grit. Now, the addendum to this story, although there is no addendum because the story is not over, is that 6 years ago, it suddenly occurred to me, with another round of a dark night of the soul, that I was highly sensitive. And so did I take that information and be like, oh, well, this is why everything's been so hard. I might as well give up. No. I took it and I thought, how do you master this? What does it mean to be a person who's highly sensitive, who's called to be self-employed? What does it mean to be called to be a royal advisor in the 21st century? What does that look like? What does that take? And that is my continued foray into grace and grit. At this point, until the next evolution will show itself. Deep breath in and let it out. So, where are you when it comes to quitting and it comes to staying with it? Where are you when it comes to grace and it comes to grit? Thank you for listening, and I hope you enjoyed this episode of A Course in Business Miracles. If you're ready to learn how to use your highly sensitive abilities to support you in being purposeful, profitable, and empowered rather than scattered, poor, and undervalued, take my free self-quiz to find out if you are indeed a highly sensitive entrepreneur. And if you are, along with your quiz results, you'll receive my free HSE Success Guide, which will teach you how to have your highly sensitive abilities working for you to create the results you desire in your business. Take the quiz and receive your free success guide now at www.hsequiz.com.